Hello and welcome to this video course on ranking your YouTube channel higher. Alright, so this is video number 1, and this is going to be the introduction to the YouTube video traffic course. Now, before we talk about the course, I want to make sure that you're in the right mindset. So I want to say that the goal here is to focus on building a brand. If you can start thinking that way, you're going to have a long-term strategy which will actually help you not only in the YouTube traffic and getting ranked on YouTube and getting natural organic traffic and all of that, but it'll also help you in many other ways as well. Now, while that may not make a lot of sense right now, it will in just a second. Now, this is not about throwing hundreds or even thousands of backlinks at your YouTube channel properties or videos. What you really want to do here is to focus on quality and not quantity here. And by doing that, it will actually help you in the long run, as you'll just see in just a minute. So before we get started and talk about the course, what I want to do now is give you a quick overview of what's inside this video course. Video number 1 is the introduction, of course. Video number 2 is what this is not about. And I want to make sure that I cover this because a lot of times when we talk about ranking on YouTube or Google or getting traffic or of any sort, there's a lot of assumptions that are made. So I want to make sure that we cover those assumptions and possibly roadblocks that are blocking your way. Video number 3, we'll talk about what Google wants and the strategy. If you understand what Google wants, then it'll make more sense on what the strategy is all about and how to implement it correctly. Video number 4, we'll talk about the ring, which is the strategy here. And of course, video number 5, we'll talk about how to automate the ring. Video number 6, we'll talk about account creation. And video number 7, we'll talk about how to outsource the account creation and the very tedious process of building the ring. And of course, video number 8, we'll talk about testing this out. And while that might seem a little bit simple, it really is and does take some time to make sure that everything works. So with that said, let's talk about getting started and what you're going to need. You're obviously going to need a product or service to sell. You're going to need to have a YouTube channel. You're going to definitely need to have money to outsource. If you do it yourself, it's going to take about a week or sometimes 2 weeks. But once it's set up and it's good to go, then everything is automated. But at the end of the day, your time is valuable, so I recommend just outsourcing this process. But knowing how everything works and all of that will allow you to teach whoever you outsource this to. Or you can pick and choose people that we will recommend that we have used personally to set things up for you as well. So with that said, let's move on to video number 2. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 2, and we're going to talk about what this is not. One of the biggest mistakes that we see a lot of people make is they assume that they know certain things, they know the strategy, they bring in what they already know and what they've seen work, and automatically assume that that is what the strategy is about. But by doing that, what ends up happening is we see that people set themselves up for failure. And we don't want that for you. We want you to be able to succeed as much as possible. So that's why I'm covering what this is not. Alright? So to ensure that you're able to successfully implement this strategy, we want to discuss things that you do not want to do. So as I mentioned earlier in the previous video, this is not about throwing hundreds or even thousands of backlinks at your YouTube channel or at your properties. In fact, YouTube has become very, very smart in figuring out if you are actually gaming the system. So what we're trying to do here is think of a strategy that works long term. So you want to focus on quality and not quantity here. It's better to get a few backlinks that are of quality rather than getting thousands of backlinks that don't even relate to your content. And we're not talking about automated softwares either. So like I said, Google's very smart in figuring out how to detect fake backlinks or computer-generated backlinks. They're able to detect patterns. So what you're trying to do here is not follow any sort of pattern whatsoever. You want to make sure that it looks natural as possible, because otherwise Google will penalize you in the future. It may not be this month, may not be this next year, it may be the 2 years later kind of thing, or it might be even this month. So what you really want to do is focus on a long-term strategy that is going to last. Now obviously you're not going to know exactly if the strategy is going to last or not, but part of the strategy is figuring out what Google wants and fulfilling that. Now, one secret to knowing whether a strategy will last or not is to ask yourself these questions. So this strategy, along with other strategies, you should ask this question over and over. Is this a shortcut? And does this seem spammy? And best of all, will this upset your visitors? So the people that are coming to your YouTube channel via google.com or any other site, is this going to upset them? Because if it does, then guess what? Google is not going to like what you're doing, because they care more about the people that go to Google or go to YouTube and type in a keyword. They care more about them because they are who they are catering to, essentially. So now that that is out of the way, let's discuss what Google wants, which is really the crucial step in understanding why the strategy will work. So now that you have an idea, don't upset the visitors. If it's spammy, if it's a shortcut, this is going to upset them, right? So what is it that Google wants in relation to this? Well, we'll talk about that in the next video. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 3, and this is all about what Google wants and the strategy. Now, we don't know exactly whether this is true or not, but based on the data that we have seen, and based on the data that not only has worked for us, but for many others, is that Google likes brands. Now, it's not necessarily that they are particularly liking brands because brands make a lot of money or anything like that, but what we've realized are certain variables that make a brand stand out. So they don't exactly go out and tell people that they like brands, but based on the data that we've seen, we have seen brands rank better. So why is that? Why is it that Google seems to rank brands better? It's because brands last long term, and they oftentimes provide value. Remember, going back to what makes the visitors happy, it's the value that they are offering, right? At least the majority. So you'll notice that brands tend to have a really good following of fans that love their content. So why is that important? Well, their concern isn't really necessarily the brand, but giving people that are searching certain keywords on Google or YouTube, giving them what they want. Now, you'll notice that brands attract a consistent following as well. So Google likes it when they find that there's not only a good following, but a good engaging and good interaction. So their fans click and engage with their content more. YouTube likes that. They love engagement. If you take a look at videos that rank really well, you'll notice commonality, and you'll notice that they have a lot of likes, they have a lot of comments. Essentially, they have engagement. And engagement is essentially the currency of YouTube. So whether somebody gets a bad comment or a good comment, a comment is a comment. A comment essentially, if you think about it, is worth about $1. Now, we're just saying that because it's like currency, engagement. Now, this means there is a higher CTR, or in other words, click-through rate. So if you have fans that really love a specific brand, they're most likely going to come back over and over again, right? So higher engagement is what Google likes to see. Higher engagement means that the fans really like the content. So this is based on the data that we have received and based on the data that we have observed. So the strategy here is to make sure that you look like a brand and you do backlinking like a brand. Make sense? So what does backlinking like a brand look like? Well, if you think about the visitors that are coming to that brand, they are looking at it, they're engaging with it, they're sharing it with their friends. Now, like I said earlier, there's no exact this is the way it is, but based on the data that we have gathered over the years and what we see, what works and what hasn't, we can safely say that looking like a brand will be better for your YouTube channel. And of course, gathering a fan base and a good following that is interacting with your content is also key. Now, if you look at brands, they have many social properties besides YouTube channels. They've got Facebook.com, they have Twitter, they have Snapchat, and more. So it only makes sense for your brand to have the same properties in your brand name and interlinking to each other, right? So let's say, for example, that you upload a video to YouTube. Then it's going to make sense for you to post that same YouTube video or share it via Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and more. So essentially, we're interlinking them together. And that kind of brings us to this strategy, which is the ring. You're basically interlinking everything together. So, like I said, for example, you post a video on YouTube, it needs to be pushed to Twitter, your Facebook fan page, and other social properties. And fortunately, because everything is going to be automated, once you do that, it will trigger and it will automate the whole process. So it makes sense because your fans will be located at these different social properties. So some people will be at Facebook, some people will prefer Twitter, and some people will prefer maybe Snapchat or Instagram and other social properties. But if you think about it, it sounds very time consuming and tedious, right? And yes, it is, but once everything is set up, it will actually make your life a lot easier. But like I said, don't worry, we're going to show you how to speed things up with a few dollars. So with that said, let's move on to video number 4.